Well, it was the 1990s, and while there were some odd trends that came and went, for Star Wars fans, Power of the Force 2 meant that toys were back on the shelf. And this meant, because it was the 90s and everything was all about beast action figures, that, well, for Star Wars fans, we were also going to be treated to beasts. I mean, it's not like they were going to, turn our beloved characters into purple dinosaurs or something to call them beasts, or, I don't know, slap on some weird armor and call the character Beast Armor Wolverine or something. Well, odder things have happened in toys. But for Star Wars, there are legitimate beasts. There are beasts of burden, there are monsters, there are creatures, there are pets, there are all sorts of things. You can even ride on a dinosaur in Star Wars. And the Beast Assortment made its debut right before the special editions with 3 different characters, or beasts, that all came packaged with a figure. For me, it's all about the figures. But beasts are cool too, and the vintage line was really not a slacker when it came to beasts. Of course, it had, as I noted, its token Ride-On Dinosaur, which I never had, but I made up for it by buying every dewback that got released since then. And I'm still jealous of kids who got to play with this one, especially because it introduced that whole trapdoor figure go inside of it thing, which, I don't know, I wish they'd bring that back. The only other beast for A New Hope that got put out was the Trash Monster, which is also called a Legomi, according to my friend Evan from high school. But by the time Empire Strikes Back came out, well, that's when we really started getting Star Wars beasts, starting with the Hoth Wampa and not Hoth Tauntaun, even though it's also on Hoth. The Wampa was definitely a favorite. Well, so was the Tauntaun. I mean, these were actually really amazing toys, both with the trapdoor on the Tauntaun and the trigger mechanism in the arm of the Wampa. But the king of the beasts in the vintage line was the Rancor monster, which was released for Return of the Jedi. And if there's one thing you know about Star Wars fans, is they will always buy a Rancor, no matter what's... okay, maybe not. But for Power of the Force 2, well, we got our updated Rancor, at least the first new one. And it came in an assortment with one of my favorite beasts of all time, and honestly, probably one of my top 10 toys that I own, the Star Wars Bantha. We'll get more into that in a moment. So let's just do a quick recap of where we were with the beasts. We'd had 2 different waves at this point, and beasts would continue to be a mainstay in Star Wars toys for years, going through the prequels, going even all the way up to the new Disney films, which introduced some fun beasts. And hey, that's great. Well, this third wave of beasts was going to be at a new price point, a lot bigger than the previous releases, and in a nice, beautiful window box, which I have a very distinct memory of finding at Toys R Us unexpectedly. It was one of those things where like they just hit and I wasn't expecting to get them yet, and there they were sitting on the bottom shelf right at opening, and I was the only one in the aisle. And as a collector, you guys probably know that is just an awesome feeling. And I scooped them both up. Now, I had a lot of hesitation about getting the Rancor. One, because, well, like some people, I'm not a huge Rancor fan. And these had a high price point, at least for the time. I mean, God, I can't imagine how much this would go for now at retail. But, yeah, can't say I'm somebody who was jumping at the Black Series Rancor. It's just, Rancors are not, I don't know, maybe it's because I also never had the toy, although I really never had the dewback either and have wanted that. So I don't know what it is. But Rancors were never really my thing, baby. And when the new one came out, to me, the Rancor was an accessory to Luke Skywalker, because I'm obsessive compulsive about getting all of the original trilogy action figures. And since this included a new, quote-unquote, asterisk Luke Skywalker figure, now with a bone accessory, well, I needed to pick up the Rancor. I'm glad that at least that they moved away from the original Ecto-Cooler version, because it just wasn't as movie accurate. And the deco they did give it was pretty cool. And he had kind of a real feel skin thing that was, similar to the Jurassic Park line that Kenner put out, and a little hole in the box. You could actually, feel how cool the rubbery skin was. Well, it's sort of the biggest accessory Luke Skywalker ever came with. And speaking of that Luke Skywalker figure, which was, for me, the real prize and the reason I plunked down all that money for a giant set, well, it technically was an improvement over the previous Jedi Luke action figure. So that would have been the single-carded version from Power of the Force 2 that came out in, was that Wave 3? Yeah, like the Shadows of the Empire wave. So Well, this figure called Jedi Knight Luke Skywalker, although he's not yet a Jedi Knight technically, and it did get a re-release both on a standard green card and on the special edition theater green card, which I should probably make a video about this one, even though it was just a carded re-release. Well, there were a few issues with this figure, not just that what had a tan vest when he first came out. One, he's got a glove on his hand, which he was not wearing in his Jabba Palace garb. It's different from what he has on Death Star 2. He also has a black cloak and hood, which he also does not have. The vintage figure got it right. It's a brown cloak, kind of like Obi-Wan Kenobi had a brown cloak, although it has no arm sleeves, or arms. It just has a hood and a cape. They, meaning Hasbro, didn't get this figure correct until 2020, which was the first modern Luke Skywalker action figure to actually have a brown, sleeveless cloak. Amazing. Now, there have been worse Jedi Luke action figures made, and we'll obviously be getting to them in time as we go figure by figure, but hey, no painted glove and no cloak. It was at least an improvement. We would get a much better Rancor, and actually this one I have and keep in my office. Maybe it's just because it's so damn cool. It was a lot bigger, but it still came in that nice window box, and it also came in the Jedi Luke. The Rancor tool would get repainted and reissued as a video game-inspired Rancor a few years later, but also as a Target exclusive. I guess Target must have a thing for Rancors, but so does Toys R Us, because the original deco would be back in a Jabba Palace Deluxe, I think it was like a $120 set, maybe more. I don't know. Also didn't buy this one, because the only thing new about it was Jabba, and I bought him off eBay. I didn't need the rest of the figures. So, we now had our first modern Rancor figure, and it was actually pretty darn good. I don't have it anymore. I think I donated it, along with a whole bunch of other Star Wars toys, to my daughter's school before we moved from California, and I kind of regret that. Well, one thing I did hold on to was the Bantha. Okay, Banthas are awesome, and let's just establish that right now. And they make great toys. Lots of different Star Wars toy lines seem to have Banthas, and I'm not sure totally what the appeal is. I mean, it's like a big, hairy desert thing with these curly horns. I guess like a goat mixed with a lion, mixed with I don't know what. But there's just something that's really cool about Banthas. What can I say? And, well, as a kid, you couldn't get a Bantha because, well, even though they appeared in A New Hope and they got them into the special editions, you really only had Tusken Raiders. And I'm a huge fan of Tusken Raiders. They're one of my favorite characters in the entire trilogy. I don't know what it is about them. Maybe it's the mysterious mask, maybe it's the cloak, but I'll pretty much buy any Tusken Raider. And I have Tusken Raiders at almost every scale. I don't know what it is. I think they're awesome. And I'm glad that we've had so many in 3 3/4. Maybe it's because I never had the one as a kid, and I'm compensating. That probably is it. It's probably also why I like dewbacks. Although, it's the reverse with the Rancor, so, hey, who knows? I probably should see a therapist for a lot of reasons. But we never had a Bantha as a kid, even though it would have been an awesome toy, and it had a lot more screen time than the dewback. But, hey, now we finally had our very first Bantha figure, as in ever. Also came in the awesome window box, but not just feeling the real scale rubber skin, this time you could feel the actual hair, because the Bantha was covered in hair, which is applied actually more like a sock when you're talking about action figures. It's how Grizzlor was done in the Masters of the Universe Classic line. And man, this was what I was excited about. Yeah, the Rancor was, a giant accessory for Luke, but this, I was just like, when I found this toy, this was like a pre-thought-out purchase. I knew I was going to get the Bantha. Now, here's a fun fact. When sailing around the world, Magellan, who was the first white person who sailed all the way around the world from, Europe to Europe, he didn't actually make it because he died 70% through the journey. So he really wasn't the first person to sail around the world. Now, here's a relevant fact to what we're actually talking about. The Bantha in A New Hope, obviously pre-CGI, was played by an elephant. And that's why it had that big kind of mouthpiece, because it was hiding the trunk. So, yeah, it was, the same elephant actually played 2 different Banthas in A New Hope, and it had to go through costume changes and a lot of different variations to sort of figure out exactly how much weight they could put on it. But, yeah, that's how they did it. It was an elephant under all of that. All right, so no elephant under this thing, just plastic. But, Man, it was awesome. I was just beyond ecstatic. The horns were articulated, and, well, for a completist of the figures, yeah, I was excited to get another Tusken Raider. Not just because I like Tusken Raiders, but I wanted to make sure I had every single figure because, reasons. Now, this Tusken Raider was more of an improvement over the original single-carded figure than the Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight that came with the Rancor. And it's for a couple reasons. Well, one is it had that cloth skirt that allowed it to sit on the Bantha correctly, but more importantly, it wasn't staring at its feet. It was such a disappointment to me that the original Tusken Raider not only had a closed hand, and he can only hold his gaffy stick with one hand, which goes against the main image of them holding it with two hands in the movie, but that staring down thing, ugh. And, of course, it also had articulated knees. So, again, it could sit on the Bantha. They actually swung out is how it worked. Now, Tusken Raiders would be released over and over and over again in the Star Wars line, and part of that is because they actually continue to appear in different movies, notably in the prequels when Anakin goes all, like, I'm going to kill the Tusken Raiders. The best one was the Vintage Series Tusken Raider, which actually didn't come out until 2021, an improvement on an earlier Saga Edition version, now getting articulated elbows. The Bantha also got a re-release in a deluxe pack when they were doing a lot of deluxe packs around the 30th anniversary. This time he kind of got like curly fur hair, like he had a perm or something. I actually got this as a gift because a friend of mine knew how much I like Banthas. I passed on it when I saw it in the store, especially because the Tusken Raider was also not canon to A New Hope. He had a more reddish-brown cloak. But I was glad to add him to my collection. And now with the Bantha, I had the complete Tatooine Beast collection. Let the race begin. Who's the coolest beast? Well, obviously it's the Ronto. I mean, come on. It's up against, Banthas and Dewbacks, and okay, I can't decide.